It's Clive De Carle here, and I'm very pleased to welcome Daniel Thompson Mills. And he's written a really great book, and well, two great books actually. The first one that I learnt about was a book for children, and I've been saying for decades, I suppose, that simple health knowledge can be given in a really fun, interesting way to children at more or less all ages. And if health was a subject that cropped up even once a week, by the time kids left school, they'd know pretty much everything they need to know to fix granny and be well themselves. So, thank you, Daniel, for coming on. Do tell us all about you and all about your book.
Well, thank you, Clive. It's great to be with you. Well, I've I've been studying and passing on really what I know from my own research and from my own experience to people for about 5 years now. This is all essentially about terrain medicine, understanding that the body, rather than being a battlefield as it's portrayed in conventional medicine, where we've got these all these outside pathogens trying to invade the body, and we have to arrange our defense forces against them, and the poor old body can't cope with that, so it has to be boosted with various things provided by the pharmaceutical industry. No, that's not what's going on in the body at all. The body is, in fact, an ecosystem. It's just a reflection of the outside world. It's a micro of the macro. The body, another way of putting it, is the body is a garden. So, in order to maintain and restore health, we need to nourish the terrain of the body like a gardener tends his or her soil. That's essentially the approach. Now, now we've got a medical system that's all based on the germ theory, as you know, Clive, this battlefield model. Um, but that's although people are sort of are very ingrained with it and looking out for invading bugs and viruses and all this sort of stuff. In fact, the standard way of looking at health and disease for many a long time has been this terrain understanding. Because if we look at all the traditional medical systems like Ayurveda, like traditional Chinese medicine, shamanism, traditional herbalism, homeopathy, naturopathy, etc., they're all based on this idea of the body as a garden. And that's only really been supplanted in most people's way of thinking since the end of the 19th century, when we had people like Dr. Louis Pasteur kick it all off. And then the Rockefellers came along at the beginning of the 20th century and were wanting to make lots of more money from oil in different ways through these newfangled medicines. And they managed to be very successful at portraying all the old medical systems, such as naturopathy and so on, as quackery. And people got onto these new medicines. Well, I'm here as really one of the many people now saying we need to get back to this terrain understanding. This is the true understanding of how the body works essentially, and it's very simple. The main principles of it are very simple, um, and very logical. And so, yeah, about 4 or 5 years ago, I produced a book for adults on this, which I called, here it is, um, which I called The Myth That Viruses Cause Disease and the Nature of Illness, a treatise on bioterrain medicine, the terrain of the body. And that's now in its third edition. And I've been going around, as you know, doing talks and presentations on this to groups and at events and things, and constantly researching more and benefiting myself from having applying terrain medicine to my life. But in fact, what happened was that not very long after I'd originally produced that book, I showed it to a friend of mine who is a home educating parent. And she said, "Well, that's great, Daniel, but what we need also is something for the children." And at the time, I just felt, oh my God, that feels way too beyond my skill set. Writing a book for children, oh gosh. Um, so I sort of thought, well, maybe that's somebody else's role rather than mine. But shortly after that, a story came through, and I've been working on it since then, but mostly it's been on the back burner for about 3.5, 4 years. Um, but this year I just decided, right, I really want to get this going. So I put some, more energy into it and managed to find an amazing illustrator through a friend who was willing to do wonderful illustrations. And then I also teamed up through another friend with a desktop publisher because that sort of technical side of it was also a little bit beyond my skill set. And so the three of us produced this amazing book, which it came out in the summer, and I'm very, very proud of it. It's called Strep Man Superheroes, a story about the magic of germs. Um, and essentially what it is with the illustrations um, throughout the book, it portrays a girl going through a healing journey. She gets walking down the street. There's a lot of car fumes. She breathes them in, and she gets these toxic bad guys, cadmium and his poisonous chum, aluminium particulate, um, taking up residence in her throat, and then the body goes into what we understand through terrain medicine is a therapeutic response, which we label illness. And often in the mainstream, that's seen as a bad thing. We need to suppress the symptoms. We need to get over it as quickly as possible. We need to take medicines and so on. Whereas in the terrain approach, we understand that, as I say, this is when we're knocked out of balance in that, through poisoning, through emotional issues or whatever, then the body then is very intelligent and it works to restore balance. So our job is to allow and support that process so that it can fully resolve rather than suppressing the symptoms, which is the quick and simple approach, but just kicks the can down the line and the underlying causes aren't dealt with. So the book sets out a story where this is all laid out in a very accessible, fun way, I hope, with the story involved around that. And a big part of it is how not only are we not being subjected to pathogenic, in other words, disease-causing microorganisms, but in fact, the body produces its own microorganisms, principally bacteria and fungi, as the body's sort of waste disposal guys. And this is in a process known as pleomorphism, which means many changing, because we have these little pinpricks of light in the body called, they've been called various different names. Antoine Béchamp in the 19th century, who was Louis Pasteur's contemporary, he observed them. He was the first person to observe them under a light microscope, and he called them microzymas. which means little bodies. And then they've been called various names over the years, protids, somatids. Wilhelm Reich called them bions because he was studying them as well. And these little pinpricks of lights are germs. They are seeds. Germ meaning seed, as in germination, as in wheat germ. And then when the terrain is in need of some restoration, then the microzymas will start changing shape and size. And there's a bacterial phase and a fungal phase, depending on what's needed. So in the story of the Strep Man Superheroes, what we've got going is, as I say, toxicity in the throat. And what's needed there is streptococcus, the bacteria known as streptococcus, or in the story, of course, Strep Man Superheroes. So they go to they're created through this pleomorphic um, uh, um, process created by the body. They then go to the throat with their vacuum cleaner and their dustpan and brushes and their and their bin liners, and they go and package up the toxicity. And then Alice, of course, is going through a therapeutic process. She's going through a period of being ill, so she's sweating out the toxins. She's snotting them out. She's coughing them out. She's maybe pooping them out, etc., etc. And then once that situation's been resolved and the toxicity has been removed, then the streptococcus, the Strep Man Superheroes, have done their job and they can go back into this seed form, into this microzyma form. And it's an amazing process. Nobody knows about it, and yet so easily observed with just a very simple type of light microscope. Um, so yeah, and of course, what conventional doctors come along and do is they see the streptococcus at the site of disease, in this case, the sore throat, and they call it the strep throat, and they say, the bacteria are the problem. You've got an infection. We need to, take antibiotics, kill the bacteria. Um, and of course, as I say, that's just suppressing the symptoms. Um, Person feels better, but the underlying causes, that underlying toxicity, has not been removed. And it's the ridiculous situation of the good analogy is seeing firemen at a fire and saying the fireman caused the fire when they're there to, obviously put it out and restore things. So yeah, that's a long answer to your question. I hope that's helped your listeners.
Well, I think it's a very clear description of the misunderstanding that's out there. It struck me when you were saying that you thought writing a children's book might be difficult. I imagine at one point you realized that you used to be one. In my own case, there's a large part of me that still is a child.
Well, yes, absolutely. And I really had to, well, fortunately, I mean, as I say, I had a woman helping me with the desktop publishing. And not only her, but one or two other people said, you've got to really simplify the language. You've got to think, just make it really simple. You've got a few complicated words in there. So, yeah, I did. I mean, I'm not sure I completely got into the mindset of being a child, but I think I got there at least to some extent.
But if you
And
can make them laugh, then you're most of the way there.
yes, yes, yes. Um, and another thing about the book that I was very keen to have was for it not to just be, I mean, obviously it's principally for children, but it's got notes for grown-ups at the back. So I really wanted it to be an all-round education, so that parents reading it to their children or just an adult reading it on their own would be able to understand the context of what the story is within of this terrain model and what pleomorphic what the magic of germs is on a more technical level, and what's going on in the body on a more technical level. So yeah, I'm as I say, I'm very proud of it, and really just want to get it out in the world.
And how would people go about getting it?
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on the way you look at it, it's not on Amazon. But I'm looking at getting on Amazon at some point, possibly when I do the next print run. Um, but for now, it's either in person when I do my presentations, obviously, but for your folk out there, largely it'll be through my website. Can order through my website, which is dandelionspeaks.msvr.uk. Dandelionspeaks.msvr.uk.
I'll
And
put a link to it
and
in the
yes.
text.
And that's where you'll get I've got actually got three books for adults as well. Um, yeah, so that's the way to do it.
Okay, and how much is the children's book, first of all?
Well, it's a tenner,
That's
£10.
that's good value. I
Yeah.
bought one. I gave it to my one of my daughters, who's a nanny, and she thought it was great. I told her to spread it around. So the other books, so you've got one on the same subject but for adults. What are the other two?
Well, the other two are how I term my books is that um, they're books that herald a new paradigm because they're all debunking the mainstream paradigm and saying, no, that's not actually what's going on. This is what's going on. And it's all about empowerment. It's all about, where do we go from here? How do we create a better world, etc. So there's one entitled The Case Against Man-Made Climate Change, where I'm talking about how the environmental movement is being manipulated for nefarious ends, and the fact that there's an urgent need for us to build resilience for whatever comes, and getting off the mainstream systems as much as possible, doing it ourselves, creating a better world now, as I say. And then I've got a third book, which is co-written with Justin Walker, and this is on the money system. It's called The Truth of How Money is Created, how a small number of people siphon off the vast majority of the world's wealth. And the key thing is, and how to change this. So how do we go about, bringing back our own sovereignty into that area? Uh,
And as Justin would say, it's incredibly simple.
it is incredibly simple. I know you've interviewed him in the past.
Yeah.
Yes. And his uncle was a director of the Bank of England, one of the first Bilderbergers. So, and he's done a huge amount of research in that area. So, I was very fortunate to team up with him. And yeah, I'm very proud of that book also.
Well, fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or have we sort of covered the points? What do you
Well,
reckon?
I think the last thing I would say is if you have a group out there, or you'd like to book me in a way to come and do a talk, I'm very keen to do that. Very keen to get out there to meet people, to do talks and events. So that's another thing. Yeah, please do get in contact if you'd like that.
Excellent. And let's say they said to you, what would be the title of this talk you might give? What do you think you'd go for?
Well, definitely on this subject now, it's the magic of germs, because I really want to put it across in a very positive way. I've been going on for quite some time about the fact that pathogenic viruses don't exist, and I sort of it's very important for people to know, but it gets a bit boring proving a negative. So I want to be portraying actually what is going on in the body, this amazing thing, these microzymas, they're so fundamental to life. Nobody knows about them, and yet they want me to be their advocate. They want me to be their spokesperson. They want to be known about. They want to be celebrated. So it really is the magic of germs. So that's what I'm particularly focusing on at the moment.
Well, brilliant, Daniel. Thank you so much for coming on, and I look forward to seeing you at some event very soon.
Absolutely wonderful, Clive. Thank you.